PD Beats here from Popternative, speaking to the writer and director of the horror film It Feeds. We are speaking to Chad Archibald. Good to see you, man. Welcome to Popternative.
Thanks so much, man. I'm happy to be here.
It's interesting. It's really interesting. First of all, congratulations. This film was fantastic. Really had a great time with this film.
Thanks, man.
Sometimes very unsettling, but I feel like that's the point, right? In horror movies. Take me through the balance of the fact that you wrote this and then you're actually directing it, because it's two different worlds in a lot of ways and two different kind of processes stepwise, right? In terms of developing a horror film. Was it a ping pong match? Were there some days where you felt like you had to be more of a writer? Were there days where you felt like you were more director? Like, what was that like for you specifically?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was tricky because we shot it very quickly, and there's so many locations for a tiny indie project that, you know, there was days where it's like, all right, we're at 3 different locations on this day, and we're just jumping through time and jumping through these different worlds and jumping through, you know, the script at different areas, you know. So one, I mean, I loved writing the script, and, you know, it was something that in a lot of ways is, you know, really personal for me, even though, you know, it comes across, it's a horror movie, it has those things, but I do have all these little elements of it that, you know, were therapeutic for me to write as well. So, I mean, it was important for me to get those in there. But like any movie, man, it's like the clock is ticking and you're trying to get something amazing done with the time that you have. And I think if I hadn't written it and knew it so well, there was definitely days on set where I was like, we were jumping around so fast that I'm like, I really feel like I'm the only person that knows what's going on here. Everyone else is like holding on, and like, you know, luckily it's like, you know, the whole crew was amazing and there's a lot of trust there. But, you know, knowing the fact that, you know, we don't have time for this or whatever, how can we rewrite this scene? How can we rewrite that? How can we do this? How, you know, being able to kind of make those decisions, is heartbreaking as it is, because really the script there was a lot of stuff in the script that we actually couldn't achieve. Yeah. And, I mean, I'm really happy with what we got with the time that we did.
One more quick writing question, then we'll move on to the actual production and film aspect of it. Right down the middle for me as a viewer is, of course, the creature feature component of it. And then there's, of course, the, you know, family dynamics, right? Especially the mother-daughter specifically. Take me through having that kind of combination and that 50-50 balance, you know, when you were writing this specifically. Were there some days where it felt like you were kind of, you know, drifting away from like the family kind of complex dynamic aspect of it, and then maybe you wanted to put a bit more creature feature or vice versa? Like, I'm just curious about, because I noticed that balance was really well done in this film.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it was really important for me always to be able to, like, you know, I should be able to take out all the horror in this film and still have a compelling story. Yes. And I definitely, when it comes to scares and things like that, it's like, they're fun to do, they're exciting, you know, we wanted to scare people in this movie. But I definitely, you know, those came when they came and they felt good when they did, but the majority of the focus was on, you know, how do we kind of create these family dynamics and these characters. And I really loved, you know, what really drove a lot of the story is you've got Cynthia and her daughter on one side, and you've got Randall and his daughter on the other side. And you've seen how Randall has reacted to this entity being attached to his daughter. Yep. He's done everything he can to protect his wife. She's passed away. It's jumped to his daughter, and now he's trying to protect his daughter. And he's gone down such a dark path to do it. Yep. So whenever this, you know, jumps and starts affecting Cynthia's family, you know, she has that decision of like, I can go down that path with him, or I can try to find a different way, you know, and use my abilities to do it. And I mean, so much of this story is really just human beings trying to protect their kids. And there really is no villain per se of like, in this movie, like Shawn Ashmore comes across as a villain for sure, but if you really look at everything that he's doing, it's like he's doing it all for good, like the reasons of protecting his child, which I mean, I think anyone would do.
There's like misunderstood labels of like villain in this for sure.
And even as the story goes on and he starts doing other things, it's like he's trying to protect more people. Like in a weird way, it's like he's a weird hero of his own story. Like he's got an entirely different movie that's just like bleeding into our main characters of Cynthia and Jordan.
I find it very interesting what you said about the story and making sure it's compelling in your filmmaking and your writing process. Because my next question is, you know, both you and I are really big fans of horror movies. We've been watching them for a long time and everything. And we are seeing exciting things happening in the genre, where things are being elevated. There's the psychological game. There's different ways of having kind of creature features, right? And I'm wondering, with the process of creating this film, do you think about any of that stuff? Do you think about the current kind of state and elevation of the horror movie genre? Or is that kind of like a bonus, like a gravy on the mashed potatoes, I guess? Like, I'm just curious about that, you know?
No, I mean, I think something with this script, a reason why it came together so quickly and why I was so close to it is I wasn't really trying to make something for the current climate. All I was really trying to do is, I wanted to create these characters, and I had a lot of influences going into this, and a lot of them are older, like not old influences, but like, I'm a huge Darren Aronofsky fan. I love how he makes dramas feel like genre movies, like I love The Fountain. That was a big inspiration for this. I love movies like The Cell, Tarsem Singh. His visuals are amazing. Obviously Nightmare on Elm Street. I've always, since I was a kid, wanted to make, a movie where you can go into someone's nightmares and, do that. It's just, it's been done. So it's really hard to do that again. But those movies were so fun and such a big part of why I grew up as a horror fan. So finally, after doing a ton of films, being able to kind of crack that code and have my own fresh take on, a lot of these influences, it was really just exciting for me to be able to go in and create these worlds and do a lot of the things that I really liked in films that I grew up on. So, I mean, it's less about what's in there now and more about, what I loved growing up on and how, making something that I would want to watch. And that actually, to be honest, the big part of filmmaking is I was just excited to make it. I love production design. I love wardrobe. I love the art of it all, and being able to kind of like create these worlds down to, what is Cynthia wearing and how is that created by the mind of, whoever she's in. It's like that stuff was so fun.
It is a lot of fun, man. Absolutely. And, this is where we shout out your, DP and your colorist on this film, because the color palette of this is insane. Like what it looks like and everything. And like, it's dark at times, but it's like the perfect amount of dark for the scenes and everything. So I'm wondering, of course, I'm sure your DP and colorist could have a lot of different things to say about this, but like, what was that journey like, getting like what you wanted color palette wise for this film? Did it change throughout kind of the process? Was there kind of certain moments where it's like, were they supposed to be that dark? Were they supposed to be like, I'm just curious because me, I'm a filmmaker too. I love talking about these things.
Yeah. No. I've been working with Jeff Mahar, the DP, for many, many years now. And he shot, the majority of the films that I've done in the last, 14 years. I've watched him for years get better and better and better. And so, I mean, he came into this movie, he had this awesome document of the entire script that was just broken down with images and lighting references and things like that. And we had gone through and watched some movies and just really kind of picked out the style that we wanted for it. And we wanted a lot of dark moments where you're lost in these worlds and you don't really know what's there. And then on top of it as well, it's like, it's not just lighting. It's not just coloring. It's like go down to like art department and everything. This was the first film that I've done where I could really kind of create a look for everything, down to the point of like painting the walls, building things on the walls. Like Cynthia's house was just a big white house whenever we got in there. And, we put the framing and like all the decor in there, and we painted all that dark, rich green and rich green curtains. And we brought all that stuff in to really give it that kind of like gothic, beautiful look.
Yes.
So being able to kind of do that, going into the school and painting all the specific school colors and doing all that, and then, lighting accordingly on top of it. It really is like all the departments kind of put together that just created that palette, which is, a big part when you're creating different worlds. It's like you have to make them feel like their own entity, They can't feel like, hey, we're just saying you're in a different world, but we're just really shooting. In a different.
There's going to be a lot of moments where there's going to be a lot of times now where people are going to start to get to watch your film in feeds. Had an amazing world premiere at Panic Fest. They can head over to popturnup.com for exclusive photo from the film as well if they want to check that out. Quick plug. Okay, so again, I didn't want to do this because I love people going in fresh, right? Because like we walk on eggshells on these interviews, right? Because we don't want to like go into big spoilers, right? But you kind of mentioned a little bit with, Randall, played by Shawn Ashmore, does an amazing job, right? There are situations where maybe it's his fault or maybe it isn't his fault, right? Depending on how you look at it, like you said, where characters are thrown in the fire and they have to act and panic and kind of fight for their lives in a lot of ways, right? I'm curious if you had the conversations interest me, right? Where it's like, how do we get there? Like, how do we get these performances? How do we get these moments? Are there a lot of conversations in regards to that kind of thrown in the fire survival component with Ashley or Ellie? Are there a lot of conversations? Are they like pre-conversations before going to production? Like, what's that like specifically with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Me and Shawn were talking about this yesterday, but with his character, it was really important, and it's tricky for him too, because again, he's thrown into the fire. But really, it's like we had talked through what his movie was.
Yes.
And his movie is like where it feeds starts is kind of in the third act of his film, So, and his film's not the film that we're watching. It's like we're watching Cynthia and Ellie, or Cynthia and Jordan, and they're just being influenced by this other story going on. So, I mean, that was really. It was really interesting to kind of work with Shawn through that stuff. And then, I mean, Ellie and Ashley, it was, we had chats all together on, what their backstories are, where they grew up, how they were built. I mean, it's so fun especially when you write a script, to kind of like create that whole history of each one of these characters. And really, it's like, I would say we spend more time just talking about who these characters are and where they have been, and and more of that than actually sitting there and learning the lines and going over the lines. There was they're both absolutely pros, and they'd come to set knowing all the lines and being ready, and we'd rehearse them right before we go and do all that. But so much of the legwork ahead of time was actually just talking about, who these people were and what was their favorite colors, and, like how they spend their days usually, and, what they're afraid of and what they aren't. And, it's so much fun kind of creating those stories with actors and actresses that just are so committed to their roles.
Absolutely. It's interesting. Last question before we kind of wrap up, and you can answer it in regards to It Feeds, but you can answer it in general with, the amazing work that you all do at Black Fawn Films. I mean, I it's interesting, right? Because, It Feeds has its world premiere at Panic Fest, and, you did talk about the fact that you agree that the climate of horror films is elevating in a lot of different ways, but that wasn't something you really thought of that much with this movie specifically. But one of the things that I think is adding to this incredible kind of world we have with horror movies these days is the global component of it, where we are getting films from all around the world, but people from all around the world are just loving horror movies. And I'm wondering, in your filmmaking career, Chad, can you take me through a moment, maybe even like if it was like, like during the pandemic or before that, where you really started to see the global kind of like bump of horror movies? Because like that's something that I love, and I love streaming that allows me to watch films from Iceland, Malaysia, right? Like I love that, right? So I'm wondering, when you started kind of as a filmmaker, really notice the impact of international horror films as well.
It's strange because, to be honest, it was well before the pandemic, and it was the first time I had really felt something like this. But the last movie that I wrote and directed was a movie called Never Lost. And that was, I don't know, 13 years ago or something like that now. And I was very, very close to that script, and it was kind of this weird genre love story thing. And it played in Taiwan at the Taiwan Film Festival, and I flew over there for it. And I was really like, cool. I mean, I've convinced someone to fly me over to Taiwan. I'm just pumped to like go see some temples and, explore a different culture. And I was like, if anyone shows up to the movie that's only in English and subtitled, I'd be pumped just that it's playing over here at the other side of the planet and whatever. So I didn't go to the actual screening. I was out I had a translator, because really like nobody spoke English there. I was there for 10 days, and, I only spoke to my translator the entire time, and he was always with me. But I showed up for the Q&A after the screening was done, and they walked me in, and it was like a 600-person theater, sold out, And I was shocked. Like, I was expecting to walk in with like 25 people or something.
Wow.
And I did this Q&A with the translator, and they translated. And then afterwards, I think I signed autographs for 2 hours. There was like a red carpet thing. I had people like crying and telling me their stories, just because it's a heartbreaking story, and that's really, it was a really personal script to me as well. Yes. And I was just amazed to see people on the other side of the world in different cultures watch something that I made in our backyard, basically in Canada, and have that kind of response.
Yep.
And it really, really moved me for sure. And it really, kind of changed the way I thought about even just making movies and how it moves.
Absolutely. No, it's when you get to, it's the communal component of it too, right? Where you like firsthand see the impact these films have on people. Yeah. is really interesting. I think that's what the film festivals are all about, right? That kind of like excitement around a premiere of a film, and then kind of seeing the reactions and everything is like the coolest thing about it. And like I said, in feeds, world premiere at Panic Fest, which was really awesome, and it's going to be in theaters pretty soon. And I want you to plug all that and everything. But Chad, thank you so much for your time. It was great chatting with you at Pop Tournament.
You too, man. Always appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Okay, so now the stage is yours. Plug away, because there's a lot. I bet there's a lot of plugs right now.
Oh man, we're just in the festival circuit with it right now. So we played Panic Fest. It's playing Fantasboa. It's playing Brussels International Fantastic Film Fest, Hardline, and then the Canadian premiere in Toronto at Scotiabank Theatre. All in the next 2 weeks. So. We're going to be flying around there, and then it hits theaters officially April 18th in Canada and the US. In the US, it also hits VOD.
Amazing. Well, they can check that out.
May 12th in the UK and Ireland.
Absolutely.
That's it. That's all I got.
Black Fawn Films and Black Fawn Films distribution on Instagram and everywhere they could find stuff. And you're at Chad Archibald, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been Pop Turd. YouTube.com/Pop Turd for previous episodes. Until next time, it's Chad Archibald and Petey Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.